Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
That's fun. So that title and all that jazz is real fun because my guest tonight is actually my child, and I'm sure it's enjoyable for them to hear what is their mother actually having as a title. So good times, good times. For those of you who are listening, you might have actually been on and listened to us before. Ziva's been a guest on this show twice before last year. We like to celebrate Pride months together, and we're actually almost doing what the title is. Like, we're queer baiting during June.
No.
Can we be queer baiting?
No.
Because we're queer.
I'll get into what it is, but it's not possible for us to do that.
Okay, so it's not possible for us to do that,
Yeah.
but we will talk about what that is. So if you've never listened to the show before, we're actually coming up on almost the 10th anniversary, which promises to be a fun episode. So the 10th anniversary is the July 1st episode. For 2024, it will be officially 10 years of being on the Pleasure Zone with Inspired Choices Network for most of it, but prior to that was with another network, but always with the same people who are representing. So yay. And the whole idea of the 10th anniversary show is we're actually going to bring back all the doctors from Doctor Who for the 10th anniversary.
Oh, nice.
And then we're actually not going to do that. I would love to do that and have all the doctors come back for the anniversary show, but we're not going to. But we
don't have the budget.
We don't. And I don't even have the budget to bring on all my favorite guests because some of them have become quite well known and would charge to be on the show now. So that's what that is. I have also had a lot of fun favorite episodes over the years that didn't actually get very many hits, didn't get very many listens or downloads. And I'm going to talk to you guys about all my favorites, why they were my favorites, what I think they could offer you so you can go listen to them. So I'll bring a lot of that up too on that 10th anniversary episode, which I'm looking forward to. And this week, we're talking all about queer baiting and rainbow capitalism. And that title came to me via my child who brought it up one day. And I was like, well, that's a fascinating topic. I think you're right. People do this. What is this? So my guest today is Ziva Jelenic for purposes of this show. And Ziva Jelenic art, for anybody who wants to follow them on Instagram and see their amazing art, which has been flying off the shelves in the last week, which is amazing. So if you'd like to grab some really cool earrings that we can ship, or any kind of their prints that we can also ship, but we can also ship the really cool dolls. You can see all of that stuff and the really cool ties. You can see all that stuff on their Instagram and TikTok as well.
Yeah.
So your TikTok is also Ziva Jelenic art. Yeah. So
I'm the only Ziva Jelenic on this planet and probably will be for a very long time. So, there's no account that you can confuse me with.
Yeah. So Jelenic spelled Jelenic, as you will see as my last name as well. So today, what crazy person came up with this topic for this episode? And
I don't know. It's just, why do you even want to talk about it?
I know, it just seems like a ridiculous topic that, for one, if we are going to talk about it, let's not offend people who actually do this.
Yeah.
We don't want to be offensive to the capitalists.
No, we don't.
Okay. And we also don't want to be offensive to people who queerbait.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're going to talk.
They deserve our respect.
Okay. So let's start with, for those of you who don't actually know what queerbaiting is, or rainbow capitalism, don't worry, you're not the only ones. I got to learn what this is only in the last 2 months. I didn't know people did this, and now I see it. I can see it everywhere now, but I didn't realize that there was terminology for it and what it is, and like the impact. It's so crazy. So let's start with queer baiting. What is that?
So queerbaiting is this thing that happens in fictional media like TV shows and movies and stuff, where there's um like a platonic relationship that has like you can clearly see that there's homoerotic subtext written into it, so that gay people will see that subtext and they will latch on to it because there isn't a lot for them to latch on to, but straight people will be able to not notice it and look over it so that the homophobes won't get offended by that and the people making the media won't lose viewership from either demographics. So it's a sneaky, cowardly way to get money from as many people as possible. And this was really prevalent in the 2010s when it was more common to see queer characters, like canon queer characters on screen, but it still wasn't common. So instead of making canon queer characters, they made friendships that could be what's the word?
Like misconstrued or taken either way?
Not misconstrued, more just that could be seen as queer.
Right.
And lost my train of thought. That could be seen as queer. And
Can I bring up an example where I think is coming up? So one example is, I think, Sandman.
no,
Really?
that's the exact opposite actually. Sandman, even though it was in the 1980s, it was one of the most diverse comics ever printed. So I'm not going to talk about that because that is the exact opposite of queerbaiting.
Okay.
But an example of queerbaiting is
So the reason I thought that was because a lot of people I know that watched that Sandman actually did not know that Sandman was supposed to be queer.
I mean that's just because
they didn't know the comic.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's canonically like non-binary. It's just that they didn't know that.
Okay.
There's a difference.
Okay.
But an example of this is the 2010s Sherlock adaptation from the BBC. A lot of like millions of people thought that Sherlock and John were in love and that they were going to canonize it in the later seasons because they genuinely were like writing it as if they were. So the Sherlock fandom was really passionate about this and they were like, oh my God, guys, we're getting representation. But then they didn't. And John got a wife but then John's wife died. So they were like, oh, we still have hope. But then they didn't. And they were still just platonic at the end. And one of the things that the creators of the show did was actively make fun of the fans who wanted them to get together.
Oh, wow.
They thought that it was like funny that people would write like gay fan fiction because this was coming from a place of homophobia that they were saying this, even if they didn't think of themselves as homophobes. It was like latent societal homophobia that society had trained them to just have. And this was also in Supernatural with Castiel and Dean.
Yeah.
And they tried to say like, oh, we canonized it in the second to last episode where Cass told Dean he loved him.
Right. Second to last episode after like 13 years, right?
15.
15, yeah.
Because they'd gone to hell to each other for several times to save the other, but they weren't in love, and it was crazy of you to think that. So they tried to say that they canonized it and that people couldn't be mad at them at the end because Cass told Dean that he loved him and then immediately got sent straight to super hell forever, eternally in just a black void. So there was no criticism that you could say about it. And but they wrote it in a way that was queerbaiting so that you could easily interpret it as either romantic or platonic, but not in a good way, so that they could still make fun of the people who interpreted it as romantic so that they could gain the favor of the homophobes and still get money from them.
That's so sad because we like both shows. Like I really like Sherlock. It's kind of sad that they did that, but
Yeah, it was, like I said, it's really prevalent in the 2010s.
in my heart,
was,
Sherlock is still in love with
yeah.
Watson. So I still have them as canonically queer, and I still have Castiel and Dean as still canonically queer.
Yeah.
So
You and millions of Tumblr fangirls.
all right, there we go. I'm a Tumblr fangirl. So even though that wasn't official, ever really officially made official.
No. And even the actors themselves kind of played into it, where there's actually an infamous quote from Misha Collins, the actor for Castiel, where at a convention he said, like Castiel, I'm also bisexual. And then about a week later he said, I never said that. What?
Wow.
So it was just a weird time in fandom history, queerbaiting was.
Especially in the 2010s, you're saying was a big thing.
That was the heyday of it. It was also in the 1960s and 70s.
Yeah.
With the Hays Code, because they instead of not wanting to write queer characters, they couldn't write queer characters because they get canceled by the networks if they did, because it was disgusting and like perverted, immoral.
And immortal.
Interview with the Vampire. What was I saying? Hays Code.
Yeah, so, can you tell people what the Hays Code is? Because a lot of people don't know.
So in the late 1930s, there was this guy called William Hays, who wasn't a nice man, who put this set of rules into place called the Hays Code, which was a bunch of rules about what you could and could not put on movies and TV that were airing at that time, mostly movies, because TV wasn't really a thing yet in the 1930s for most of the population. But anyways, what it was basically like women couldn't have their nipples showing. There could be no homosexuality of any kind. You couldn't show violence or even
even pregnancy, right?
Yeah, you can show pregnancy.
It was like I Love Lucy could not show her as pregnant.
Yeah. They couldn't show married couples just like talking in their shared bed, which is why you see separate beds a lot in older media.
I think that changed with Bewitched. Wasn't that one of the first ones? I think we were watching that somewhere.
Maybe. But there was also racist stuff as well, so they couldn't show white slaves. They could show black slaves, but they couldn't show white slaves because that was an abomination.
And they couldn't show black people kissing white people.
They could, because that was also an abomination. And Harry Belafonte and Star Trek both tried to get rid of that. Star Trek broadcasted the first interracial kiss as a protest against the Hays Code. So yeah. Let's see. Where was I?
You were on a rant. You were on a rant about the Hays Code in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, and especially
yeah, 60s. So around the 40s, 50s, 60s, and into the 70s, there was instead of having canonically queer characters, they'd have villains who were really effeminate and like flirted with the male characters in an attempt to make them seem more villainous because of the societal views around homosexuality and the stereotypes associated with that. But also, as a reverse way, if you made the villains queer coded, then that made queer people villainized. So it was
a big mess.
Yeah. Even Disney did this. In fact, Disney was one of the main doers of this. They've been doing this since the 20s and up until the 90s even. Like Ursula was one. She was based on a drag queen called Divine. That was her main inspiration. So even her makeup is directly a Divine reference.
So For my generation, I never actually heard the word canon until you started saying it. So for
Yeah.
my generation, or maybe some people who are listening, when you're saying the word canon and canonical,
Yeah.
can you explain what that means?
So canon is a term for something that's true in the canon of a movie, TV show, book, whatever, any piece of fiction. So like, I would say, like, in Doctor Who, the TARDIS is blue canonically because that's true in the canon. Um, or like, what's another? Like, in Supernatural, Dean canonically has a car.
Okay.
So yeah,
So it's part of the storyline,
yeah, something that happens
repeatedly in the storyline.
not
No?
repeatedly, just something that's true in the story.
Okay.
So, stuff that's non-canon is stuff like fan fiction and, non-canon stories like little companion books alongside it that aren't supposed to be taken as like true to the actual storyline of whatever it is.
I
That
get
makes
that.
sense?
Yeah. So you can take a deep breath. We're going to head to our first commercial break so you can go on a great rant after that. We're going to talk more about queer baiting and rainbow capitalism when we come back. If you guys have any questions, you can come on over to the Inspired Choices Network. You can ask live in our chat room. And we're going to head to our first commercial break. You're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back from after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. For those of you watching tonight, my guest is officially the only guest that I can ever say that I birthed through my loins. It's officially the only person I can ever say that about. Now, I have had the person whose loins I was birthed through on here as well. So welcome, the one who I birthed. And we're talking today about queer baiting and rainbow capitalism, some topics that you might not have heard about before, and some topics that, might offend people. That happens. We are celebrating Pride Month, and I think this is a really great conversation because the part of the conversation we're going to be talking about in a little bit is rainbow capitalism, which has a lot to do connected with Pride Month. But before we get into that, the queer baiting conversation is really fascinating. And I think, Ziva, for some people listening, I'm going to bring up that question that somebody super ultra conservative might ask you. and you can say whatever you want in response, but try and keep the F words out as much as possible. Why is it offensive to queer bait?
Mhm.
Yeah. Like, why is queer baiting offensive?
I mean, they wouldn't know that word, first of all.
Okay.
So could you rephrase the question to sound
Okay.
more like an angry conservative?
Why should we have queer people on TV?
Because we exist. End of story.
Okay.
Okay.
So why is representation so important to you?
So that people don't think that they're disgusting and horrible and that they should just, end their lives because they don't belong in this world, basically.
So I think in our house, I say some things that can be really kind of like I like to play with what's the exact opposite of what we're being told about about being like about anything queer. And one of the things that I hear is here's a quote, I don't care what they do with it as long as I don't have to see it.
Yeah.
And so I've tossed that one backwards. I'm like, I don't care what you heterosexuals do with your life as long as I don't have to don't put it in my face. You see how ridiculous that sounds? Just
Yeah.
saying.
And the thing is that that's whenever somebody says that, that's never true at all, ever, because you do actually care if you see it and you get mad. That is caring.
Yeah.
Caring isn't just loving something, it's also hating something and being annoyed by something. So if you don't care but you still get mad about it, you do.
You do care.
You do. If you don't just want to see it shoved in your face,
I don't even know how it gets shoved in your face. Like, are they suggesting that like, two gay boys are like just shoving their penises in people's faces and saying, "Take this now, like you have to watch me have sex." Like, is that what they're
if
saying?
they do, that's assault.
That's assault,
That's
regardless.
not okay.
Regardless of when somebody's forcing anything on you, that's assault.
But if they aren't doing that, they aren't shoving it in your face. Hope this helps.
But wait a second, Zeev. I'm watching a show and then queer content comes up and two boys start kissing. They shoved that in my face and I kept watching. It's obviously their fault. I didn't turn the channel and I got mad and offended. And then I went to, local senators and told them to get these shows off the air because they're offensive. And same with those crazy books that we have to take out of the libraries because you know what? I kept reading them. They were awfully offensive. Hello, stop reading it if you don't want to read it. Stop watching it if you don't want to watch it. We don't really watch a lot of stuff where, you know what? Ziva's not 18. We're not watching people having sex on screen because that's not appropriate.
No. And like, I'm not like a slasher movie fan, so I just don't watch slasher movies. It's that simple. If you don't want to see something, you don't have to see it. But
and
also,
other people might want to watch it.
Also, ask yourself why you don't want to see gay people. And I guarantee you the answer will always be because I think it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because if you think that that's any different than straight people kissing, which happens in every show
all the time
ever exist.
I think even Sesame Street.
Literally every show to ever exist, there has been a straight person, no exceptions. So why is it so different to you if there's queer people? Because you don't like queer people.
Because you don't even know half the time who's queer. Yeah. Now, that's another funny one when I've had people say stuff like that in front of me, and I'm like, hold your effing horses. You're sitting in front of somebody who's actually queer. So can you end the conversation now before I punch you in the frickin' face? And they're like, oh, I didn't know. Do I need to wear a flag for you to not be an offensive a-hole? No, you can just not be an offensive a-hole to everyone and stop being a homophobic, racist bigot. It's just a thought. Just be kind to human beings in general and stop being a-holes.
Yeah.
What a concept.
Yeah. So, and queerbaiting came out of wanting to appeal to the homophobes so they don't have to see stuff that they don't want to see because it's indoctrinating them. But also
you were indoctrinated to be straight in Catholic school. Pretty hardcore.
Yeah. My teacher had to skip over parts of the book that said that gay people went to hell. That was written in 2011 because she didn't want us to see that and hate ourselves. So, you know, shout out to Miss McFarlane. But yeah, I was literally indoctrinated to be straight, and it didn't work.
No, it didn't work. And in fact, you were so stressed. I would remember you coming home and asking me things like, is it okay if I marry a woman? I'm like, yes, it is. And then there was also the year of, is it okay if I marry a tree? I'm like, technically, yes, it is in Mexico. And is it okay this? Is it okay? Actually, the very first one was, is it okay if I don't marry a man? Yes, it is. Is it okay if I don't have babies? Yes, it is. So it's not like we had these full-on conversations. Ziva was growing up in a house with, there was me, there was grandma, and then super dad Mike came along. And so Ziva grew up in what appears to be a very heterosexual, heteronormative household. How did we indoctrinate you to become gay?
Exactly.
I'm sorry for loving you exactly how you are.
Mm-hmm. And
the sarcasm runs wild.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought again. So yeah, people have said this before, but it's not a choice. So if something's not a choice, you don't get to hate that person for it, you know, basically.
Or be kind, or just be kind. Let's just simplify it. Can we just be kind? And what does that mean? So here are some words to just FYI in your own thoughts. When you hear your own brain saying things like, I don't care as long as I don't have to see it, check yourself.
You do care because you don't want to see it.
And what is it you don't want to see, and why do you find it offensive? As long as you don't put it in my face, or here's another doozy that I recently heard, as long as you don't hurt my family. So I'd like to address that one because I find that one absolutely effing ludicrous. Pedophiles are pedophiles. That is not, for some reason, there's a lot of people who have decided that pedophiles equal that you are under the umbrella of LGBTQ. Guess what? Pedophilia is not under the umbrella of LGBTQ. And in fact, 2S++.
2S LGBTQIA+, yeah. It's a long
So
one.
pedophilia is not under that category.
Horrible.
When we're talking about 2S LGBTQ++, we're talking about consensual relationships, loving relationships, nothing to do with people being abusive. So yes, there might be like BDSM falling into those categories, but that happens regardless and always consensual.
And there are queer pedophiles, but the problem isn't that they're queer, it's that they're a pedophile.
That's the problem. The problem is pedophilia. End of story. So for those of you out there who would like to argue that, I'd like to get you to look at the stats in the US on how many married men, particularly in the US, were arrested last year alone for sexual assault, and I think it's specifically pedophilia. There was over 10,000 arrests, and some of them were your favorite pastors, your favorite senators, your favorite teachers, your favorite firemen. And guess what? Most of them were male, and most of them identify as straight. And guess what? Pedophiles, as well as rapists, as well as sexual abusers in all kinds of ways. So yeah, let's think about that twice. If you really don't know the difference, education is important. I don't think I've ever really stressed that enough on this show. I stress it all the time. Consent is 100% important. Being of age of consent is 100% important. You can't consent to something when you're 9 or 10 years old to something happening in your body by some adult. No. So, okay, that was a rant I wasn't expecting to go on, but
so this is important too. A lot of homophobes try and make the argument that there's a subsection in the queer community for that called MAPS, which no, we shut that down very, very quickly. Pedophiles try to make a identity called minor attracted person with a flag and everything, and they tried to say, it's not a choice either. Actually, no, it is. You're hurting children. But yeah, they tried.
And there's no consent.
There's no consent. Yeah, literally everyone in the community knows that, and nobody accepts them. Nobody in their right mind accepts that. So the people who try and use that as a excuse for why they hate us, that's not a real excuse, because it's not true.
And they're not invited in the community.
They're not welcome. They're just simply not welcome. There was also a thing called autistic sexual.
What? I haven't heard that one.
And the definition was attracted to autistic adults and children. And that was also shut down so fast. Within like 3 minutes of that being posted on Twitter, people were like,
whoa,
you're evil. You're evil.
Trying to justify your attraction to children, I don't know what lifetime or what happened to you, but that is not ever in any lifetime acceptable. You can try and justify it looking at the Greeks and how, Sparta, you can try and justify it with Sparta. They were trying to create warriors. It still wasn't acceptable. It's just what they did because they could get away with it. Not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there are still countries in the world where children are being married off at like 7 years old, at like 10 years old. It's effed up. It's not acceptable. Okay, we're going to go on a break so that we can just take some breaths, move out of the pedophilia conversation. And I wanted to bring it up because somehow we always get lumped together.
Yeah.
Always.
Every single.
As long as you don't hurt my family. As long as you don't hurt my family, I will not kill you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Otherwise, watch out. Mama Bear's on the loose. All right. So we're going to head to the next commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight we're talking about a topic you might not have ever heard about, queerbaiting and rainbow capitalism. We're bringing that up during Pride Month because a lot of companies actually play into rainbow capitalism, but also because queer baiting has been going on for decades in media through movies, TV, and everything. And it's actually, it's nice to have representation, but it would also be nicer if the representation got to be more respectable. I guess that might be the word, where the characters can be themselves and it doesn't
Like
have to be hidden.
not be villainized.
Yeah.
Or where, so in the 2010s, there was also a thing of wanting to be so politically correct that the queer people could never be villains because they always had to be perfect representations and they could never be people with actual problems and flaws just like everyone else. So I think it's really good that we're seeing the end
of that. There's like a big pendulum swing, right?
Yeah, where first there was queer people only being villains. And then it was queer people are always perfect. And they can never have any moral problems. And then now we're seeing queer people are people.
Yeah.
And that's really good. So we're seeing the end of queerbaiting now, and I think that's fantastic because, and like, it might just be because of the show that I watch, but it probably is just because of the show that I watch. But in almost all of the recent shows that I've been watching, there's at least one canonical queer character who's an actual fleshed out person.
Yeah.
If they're a good or a bad person. And that's really good.
Like, how much do we love Discovery for that?
Yes.
So much representation.
And
BIPOC representation as well.
Yeah.
Like representation left, right, and center. And for the first time in sci-fi, we have a woman who is not size 0 in Tilly.
Yes, Tilly. Tilly's awesome. Just Star Trek Discovery is awesome. Also, probably one of the first sci-fi things ever, apart from really niche Marvel comics or like DC comics, to acknowledge male sexual assault survivors. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, moving on from Discovery.
Because we could talk about Discovery for like a whole hour.
Yeah. Where were we?
Well, we were kind of moving out of queer baiting because, as you were saying, the whole trend in media is now starting to shift.
We're seeing it less and less.
Yeah, where queer people can just be people with lives. Actually, I think one of the first times we see that happen is in Schitt's Creek, with David being a person with a life.
Annoying and kind of, can I say the B word?
Yeah.
And then kind of bitchy at first, and then at the end he's still kind of annoying and bitchy, but he at least has good morals and he's a good person.
Yeah, he's lovable.
Yeah, he's lovable.
Yeah.
So he has character development.
And there's never like we have to resolve the fact that this character is queer.
It's just accepted immediately by everyone, even people that you wouldn't expect to like be okay with it. It's just like, oh, there's David. He's kind of weird. But he's not weird because he's queer. He's just kind of weird.
Yeah. I mean, he wears sweaters in June.
Yeah.
So it's David. Yeah. And the character that he ends up also being in love with is like, what I love about that character, and I can't remember his name right now, but David's husband, he ends up marrying him, I think, in the end.
Yeah.
He is like, he isn't camp, right? So he's not obvious. He's
like the straight man stereotype, except not horrible and also gay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's quite cool to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other characters in there that were pan that were just like, oh, that's what I am. Like, there was actual like recognition of, and it wasn't like a big conversation. It was more like a little bit of self-discovery, and then they moved on.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. That and Catherine O'Hara's character from that show has become like a total gay icon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every drag queen would love to be
Moira Rose.
Moira Rose. If you haven't seen that, it is a CBC show from Canada, and you can find it on different platforms. I think it's on Netflix too, no?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. It's a great show. So great representation, and I think one of the first shows that had really excellent representation without the struggle of, oh, I have to come out, because that was a lot in a lot of the shows in the 80s and 90s that
Yeah,
had
it's
characters
like
like the struggle to come out. Will I be loved? Will I be accepted?
Their main or even like only personality trait was they struggle because they're queer and there was nothing else to them.
Yeah.
Or their main struggle in life was that they're queer. So like it just gets kind of boring because they can only see queer people as their struggle and not as like their happiness or their hobbies or something or like their dreams. So, but like I said, we're seeing the end of that.
Yeah, which is amazing. So I think that that's happened for, it's happened definitely for the queer community. It's happened also BIPOC community too.
Every community pretty much, just in different stages at this point.
Yeah, so for sure historically there were all, the Black characters were either written as slaves or villains as well.
Yeah, and then they were just seen as like, oh, we should feel so sorry for them. They're struggling so much. And then now it's just like, oh, that's a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that shift. Hopefully that pendulum swing. We need those pendulum swings though. And I have a friend who works in decolonization, and she talks about how when these shifts happen in society, they go from one extreme to the other until we come to like a happy medium. So maybe we're coming to that place of a happy medium. And we're going to have a break in about 4 minutes. So before we do that, I know the show's almost over. We literally only have about a few minutes left before we're done. Let's tap into what is rainbow capitalism. Okay. And let's bring down the rainbow capitalists.
Yes. Okay. So rainbow capitalism is when companies like change their logo to a pride flag, or they put out pride merch.
Only during June.
Only during June, or like but sometimes they the rest of the year they do nothing for the queer community, or they actively hurt it. Or even like they're just putting out pride merch and doing nothing to help the community. So Disney is a big example of this, because Disney has actively so not only have, like I said earlier in the show, that they've repeatedly put out stereotypes that actively hurt and harm queer people, but they also didn't try to amend for that. They just went straight into, we love gay people. They weren't like, this was a horrible mistake that we made and we're so sorry for this. They just tried to make people forget about it, and they removed those videos off of their streaming service, which isn't the
solution.
Isn't the solution. Forgetfulness is not the solution. But yeah, rainbow capitalism is just getting money from queer people because they know that queer people want things that make them feel seen, like pride flags, or I don't know, like cool mugs. and they
carabiners.
Carabiners. I don't think they know enough about or care enough about queer people to actually do that. But yeah.
I just want to point out that you're doing the bisexual sitting. So.
I am. Target is also an example of this, where I don't think that they actually donate to any charities that I know of. I'm probably wrong.
But if they do, put it in the comments, and anywhere there's comments, if you actually have evidence that they do help out.
I'm willing to be proved wrong. But as far as I know, they don't do anything that actually helps the community besides selling stuff, which more just helps them
make money.
During Pride Month, they sell binders and stuff, and they sell like watered down.
Can you explain binders? Because some people are going to think those are the things you take to school in your backpack.
Yeah, let's just forget about that. Binders are they're like really tight tank tops for trans masculine people to bind their chests so that they feel like more masculine, so that they have flatter chests. Straight, like cis people can do that too. It's just that it's a lot more common among the trans mass community, but it's just a shirt. So
just a tight shirt.
Anyone can wear it. But yeah, anyways, Target's infamous for their Pride collection, and like I said, I don't think they actually do anything to help the community. So that's basically what rainbow capitalism is surface value allyship whilst not putting in the work.
Is this kind of like Bud Light when they sent Dylan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Prime example of that. When they yesterday there was a huge, not yesterday, last
year.
week.
Okay.
Not last week.
Last year.
year.
Yeah.
Last year. Bud Light, the beer company, sent Dylan Mulvaney, the trans influencer, a case of beer, not a case, like I think just one.
It was something
one
beer
can
related. Yeah.
Of beer with her face on it is like, hey, you're cool. And then the transphobes didn't watch past second 5 of her video with that can of beer in it, and they were like, oh, Bud Light is trying to turn us gay. All the cans have Dylan Mulvaney's face on it now.
It's one can.
It was one can, and it was just hers. But yeah, she unfortunately faced so much hate for that. She went into hiding for a few months just because she couldn't handle the amount of hate from transphobes who were like, you're ruining beer. You're trying to be a woman, but you're drinking beer. Faker.
I know no women that
can't
drink beer. Absolutely no women drink beer. I've, definitely not in England at the pubs on EastEnders. None of them drink beer.
And the funny thing is that they were buying entire cases of Bud Light, buying them, sending money to the company, and then shooting them. Because apparently that wasn't supporting the company by buying entire cases and then shooting them.
It's kind of ironic and beautiful.
Yeah.
They probably made more money than ever.
But the rainbow capitalism part was where they didn't stand up for Dylan Mulvaney after they just let her handle the backlash of something that wasn't even a problem, that she didn't even do.
She didn't even ask for.
It was a present to her.
She didn't ask, can I have a beer can with my face on it?
For her either 100th or 365 Day of Girlhood, which is how it was her series that documented each day of her being on estrogen. She called it Days of Girlhood. And she was celebrating her 1 year of girlhood, and they sent her a present, and she was brutally attacked for it. It was not a fun time for the community.
Yeah, it was really hard on their mental health. So that, I think that was just a prime example I wanted to bring up. So yeah, we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about rainbow capitalism. And then just how can people find that, look for it, and see that it's happening? Yeah, so we'll talk about that. Yeah.
And not support it.
Right, yeah. Maybe some top companies that you can, target, right?
And alternatives.
Yeah, alternatives. Awesome. So let's talk about that definitely when we come back. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we're going to wrap this show right after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email. info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight we've been talking about queerbaiting and rainbow capitalism here with the one that I birthed through my loins, Ziva. And this is not the first time we've been on together. It's the third time we've been on together. And I love to see how your confidence on podcasts have grown. And And the fun thing is they actually have homework that has to do with podcasting. I'm like, you got this. You've been on a podcast for over an hour and you only have to talk for 3 minutes. You're going to overdo that homework. So we're good. So, on economics, you could bring in, rainbow capitalism and talk about the economics there. I don't know.
can't.
Would they let you?
I can't.
Oh, you can't.
Yeah.
Oh, it's specific topics.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's high school for you. So let's talk a little bit about some of the top ways to identify when rainbow capitalism's happening.
Yes. So it's really, even when you know how to spot it, it's really hard to spot because like it's hard to tell when a company is just trying to make money or when they're like by buying these things you will be supporting X charity. So one way how to spot it is if a company is known for not supporting or like actively discriminating or lobbying against queer people, yet still releasing Pride merch in June, that's rainbow capitalism. But the sneakier side of it is when they say like, by buying this badly designed mug, you'll 5% of the profits will go to the Trevor Project.
What is the Trevor Project?
I don't know.
You're just making that up?
Specific. No,
Okay.
It's a real charity.
Okay.
Queer youth charity. I don't exactly know what they do, but that's a real thing. Yeah, it's less of a problem when they are actually donating to charities, but even then, if it's only like 50% of the profits,
of a particular product, like they couldn't give 50% of their profits of every product because they really wouldn't be able to support all their employees.
Yeah, then they'd get massive boycotts too.
Yeah.
Because then people are able to pick and choose what they buy so they don't donate to that charity.
Right.
So like it wouldn't be rainbow capitalism if a company said, for this month, we're donating 30% of our profits to the Trevor Project. That wouldn't be rainbow capitalism. That would be actually supporting a charity. But if
actively,
yeah. But if they said we're only donating 5% for this one line of products, or we're not donating, that's when it's a problem.
Yeah. Or if they're openly saying like we don't actually support, like we don't have any charities that we're giving money to.
Yeah, that's
it's almost more honest. At least they're like, hey, we don't actually give to charities. We're just, and then people can go, okay, I either will invest in the company that doesn't give to charities or I won't.
Yeah.
See, my generation, we didn't actually have companies who invested in charities most of the time. This is very like pretty new in the last 25, 30 years where you have people concerned about humanity and there are companies that are set up specifically that will have money that is, part of the money goes to something that's going to better humanity. This is not a new concept, really. I mean, it is a new concept. It's not something that we've done a lot of before.
Which is disappointing.
It is disappointing.
Yeah. Oh my God, I lost my train of thought again. Oh, where was I going?
You were talking about the Trevor Project and 5% versus 30%, and we've literally got 2 minutes left, so it's all good.
Okay, I have more I need to say.
We can always have more combos. So we were talking about how to identify.
Oh yes, and alternatives. So if you want to buy Pride merch, but you don't want to support rainbow capitalism, buy from independent queer creators. And yeah, there's tons and tons and tons of small businesses out there, and a lot of them really need the money. Like there's a lot of trans people out there who need transition healthcare to save their lives so that they aren't like horribly depressed. And their profits go towards helping them afford that, or
like aftercare after surgery, which especially in the US where they're not getting that.
Yeah. Or like, queer creators who make things like, really unique pieces of art that you aren't going to see anywhere else. And a lot of us also donate to things like donating to things like other causes, like, you know, I don't know, raising money for Gaza or stuff like that.
Yeah, anything
So
where you're like looking after humanity.
yeah, support
Thank you for
creators.
listening to The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.